Welcome back to our channel. Today we're going to be speaking with a first-year BSMD student at Boston University. And if you like content like this, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Can you introduce yourself?
My name is Akshay Vasudevan. I am a first-year student at Boston University in their 7-year medical education program, which is 3 years in undergrad and 4 years in med school.
How competitive is it to apply?
It's a very competitive program. About more than 2,000 people applied. Only around 70 got interviews, and in the end, there's 24 of us in the program itself.
Wow, that's crazy. How does it feel to be basically part of the elite for BSMD programs?
It feels pretty good, but after getting into college, I realized it's not just being at the top. That also means doing a lot more work in school, but it still feels pretty good, and it means my future is set for me.
I love that for you. What drew you to apply to BSMD programs?
So even when I was younger, I knew that I wanted to go into medicine, and having such a strong desire and focus in medicine, I knew that I most likely would not be changing my mind while I was in undergrad. And a BSMD program is a great way of getting into med school and getting through it faster. And it ensures that guarantee from the start of undergrad, so you can start focusing on medicine. And once I really learned about BSMDs and learned how much they could help in that way, I knew that that was what I wanted to do, because like I said, I was already set on medicine. So there wasn't any sort of hesitation in that. What if I don't want to do business? Or what if I don't want to do medicine and I want to do business? Sorry.
And so how many schools did you apply to? Can you break it down by both BSMD and traditional?
Right. So I applied to 21 schools in all. 7 of them were BSMD programs. Five of them were business programs, undergraduate business programs, and the remaining were normal undergraduate. With my major was normally some sort of science, biology, or chemistry related major.
And what's your major at Boston? Do you get to pick, or is it like one?
Right. So my major at Boston is medical sciences. It is just one major that they pick for us. However, they also require all of us to pick a minor that is not directly science related. So that allows us to explore and branch out a little more and see different fields.
Did you pick business, or you do something else?
I actually ended up picking medical anthropology as my first minor, and I'm thinking of picking up psychology as a second minor, because I thought, well, I was interested in business, I wouldn't really be using those skills as much, and it's not really as interesting to me as these fields are.
So one of the most popular questions we get is, how important is research? And everyone has such a big emphasis on research these days. How much research did you do before applying?
So before I applied, I had participated in 2 research projects. However, neither of them had been published yet at the time. And I think that research, while definitely beneficial when applying for undergrad, is not a be-all, end-all. I know many people in my program who have done research and many who haven't as well. So I don't think it's the most important thing. It definitely can help your application, but it's not a necessity.
And what kind of activities or qualities did you highlight then in your essays and your resume and your common activities list?
Right. So for my activities, I focused on 2 things. One was the sports I played, which for me was golf, and I used to swim and horseback riding. And in terms of other activities, I also talked about my volunteering and any, I guess, particularly noteworthy experiences for me, something that I thought was important to me and how it shaped my life. And
He's
then
being modest, so I said this a lot during like the time we worked together as well. Remember how I always used to tell you, like, make sure you talk about like the Yale Young Global Scholars.
Yeah, there was also that.
Yeah.
There were a couple summer programs. That one was definitely the most important of the summer programs, I would say.
And so when you were kind of writing your personal statement and your why medicine, were those the things that you focused on, or did you have like a different story that you were highlighting?
Right, so why medicine? I had different specific activities from what I had in most other places, but it was a similar idea again, like the main things that shaped my life. So I talked kind of about on my I kind of took the reader on a journey through my life of the main key experiences that made me want to pick medicine, and then in the end, I concluded it with why I want medicine, what I want to do with medicine, and what I think is important in medicine.
Do you remember what stories you included for both your personal statement and why medicine?
Right. So for my why medicine, I remember my main personal story was about my grandmother when I was traveling in India with her, and she is a doctor and worked at worked at some local clinic. So when I went there and I saw that so I was originally in the city and I saw some hospitals there. So comparing the difference between these two hospitals led me to see that there's some serious problems in healthcare because there are many people and very few doctors in the cities, and not everyone can get the care, or sorry, not in the cities, in the outerlying villages, and there's not many people who can get that care that they need. Whereas in the city, there's a lot of doctors, a lot of them are free a lot of the time, and there's not as I guess there's not as much wait or rush to try and get a doctor. And seeing that difference is one of the things that truly sparked my interest in healthcare.
And what about your personal statement? What did you talk about in their personal statement?
So my personal statement took a bit of a different route. I focused less on the medicine and more on one's specific impact on how it shaped my life, which for me was I was in I was very avid in my horse riding. I love horses and I love riding them. However, I had a injury in my life that made it hard to ride horses because it was in my hip. Or I guess not an injury is probably the wrong word, but I had a problem with my hip that made it painful to ride horses for too long. So that shaped and changed my life a lot. So I moved from that to focusing on a different sport in my golf, along with kind of finding a way to persevere and continue in horse riding. So I talk about how it affected both of my sports and how I got through it. So basically the challenge that I faced.
Nice. That's super smart because obviously medical school is not going to be easy. You're going to have a lot of challenges. So they want to know that you can, pivot and have that resilience.
Right.
Plenty of time to talk about medicine later on. So I think that was a really smart technique.
Thank you.
Yeah. One of the things that we did when we first met, do you remember the panic that ensued?
Yeah, I did not know what I was writing at all in the beginning. Darlene helped quite a bit with that.
Yeah, it was kind of funny because his mom and Michaela were like, you need to meet with Darlene like every single day. And then we finally met and I was like, I don't think we need to do that. And I kind of, re-steered you into the right path.
Once I got the direction, it was much easier.
Do you remember what your opening line was for your personal statement?
My opening line.
Yeah. You're gonna look it up, huh?
I was gonna say I don't think I do.
This is like still one of my favorite ones that we did. So his opening line was, I think it was like, how old were you when the hip thing happened?
When the hip thing. I was I believe I was 14. Yeah, I believe I was 14.
Yeah, so his opening line was, "At 14 years old, I thought my career was over."
Yeah,
Yeah, and
I remember that.
I just love a good dramatic introduction, and I feel like it makes it like stand out because, with admissions, they're reading so many applications, and a lot of them are usually like, well, my grandma died, or, this happened, and so
Mhm.
a lot of the things end up sounding the same. So if you are able to kind of play it up and make it a little bit dramatic, the personal statement is such an important component, even in BSMD programs, and people often forget that. And so one of the biggest advices that we always give is making sure you have such a good, interesting opening. Otherwise, you never know if your application's just going to get tossed out.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Because they're probably reading for like 8 hours a day. Like that's a lot of reading. And I know I've talked to like hundreds, maybe even like thousands of kids at this point, and I can name, I think, maybe 2 or 3 others that have done horse riding before. So I think that alone like helps you stand out, and then have been really passionate about that. And then I think that opening line definitely makes you like stop and think like, where is he going to go with this?
Right.
Yeah.
A
They're
little
like,
open-ended, but intriguing.
Yes.
sorry, what was that?
I said it was a little open-ended, but very intriguing.
Yeah. They're like, he's either super dramatic or he's going somewhere good with it. So we got to read more to find out.
Maybe
Maybe it was
both, and
both.
that's okay.
And the other thing is, I typically, and I don't know if you feel the same, Lindsay, but I typically don't let people write about sports. Like, I just don't think it's that interesting at all. Or, a lot of people are like, oh, I broke my arm doing this or that. And I'm just like, it's not that interesting of a story, right? And so when we were talking about it, I was kind of like on the fence. And ultimately, I was like, I think this actually could be a good idea because it wasn't just like the equestrian thing, right? It was also golf. And I don't think you mentioned this, but like you also had a difficult time playing golf, even with the hip injury. And you didn't know until you started playing and then you found that out.
Right. Yeah. With the golf, it was to make a correct swing. I couldn't turn my hips in the direction I needed to, so that made that challenging as well until I figured out how to get around it.
Yeah.
I kind of am the same philosophy as you, Darlene, where sports injuries, and same thing with like, oh, I failed my first like test in school and then I had to work really hard to get over it. It's kind of the same vibe where everyone's story is going to be the same. So coming from it from a different angle and putting it almost adding new elements too, I think was a really smart way to take maybe a often used topic to make it unique and ultimately stand out. And plus that opening line definitely did help.
I just love drama. All right. What was the application process like?
The application process for me was very long, which might have something to do with applying to over 20 schools, but it was also very rewarding, I would say. Finishing an essay or submitting an entire application always felt like I had just done something, and it felt kind of like opening up my paths for the future, giving me options. So it definitely took a lot of work and a lot of time, but it was 100% worth it. And I think it was overall a fun time. That's not something I think many people would say to describe their application process, but I had fun with it, and I think that's one of the things that helped me write better essays and try to stand out.
What was the hardest part for you?
The hardest part for me would have had to have been, I think, writing either my why medicine essay or my strengths and weaknesses essay, because I guess those aren't different per se. Those are very common questions in essays, but truly thinking about it and trying to get a genuine and deep answer for both of them was both easy and hard, I should say. It was easy in that once I knew what I was writing, it just came out because it was obviously something that I knew, something I've been thinking about, but trying to analyze in my life my strengths and weaknesses or what directed me to medicine took time and effort and took a while, I would say.
Can you tell us a little bit about your interview process, how you prepared, anything that you wish you could have changed about it?
All right. So my interview process to prepare for it, what I did was I did a couple practice interviews with Darlene and with my parents because both of them have had experience interviewing people at jobs. And I was asked a lot of questions. Some of the basic questions they're going to ask you in any medicine interview is obviously your why medicine. And I had to learn to differentiate that answer from what I wrote on the essay because obviously if they're interviewing me, they've already read my essay. So they want to hear they want to know that's true, but they also, I think, want to hear a little bit more to it, more to the perspective. And that's one thing. And then on top of that, it was kind of just getting used to the atmosphere of an interview, being asked a lot of different questions that you might not have been prepared to have been asked, and looking at different types of interviews as well. I remember one of mine used I forget what exactly it's called, but the format of where you go into breakout rooms for a very short time to answer a specific question with one of the professors. So getting used to those different environments and being asked questions and having to think on the spot was really what helped me. I don't know if there's anything I would specifically improve. I guess the biggest thing would probably be more practice, but even for my first interview when I went up to it, I feel like after what I had done, I was prepared for it. While I was still nervous because it's a big interview, and that was actually my first interview was actually my interview to my Boston program, the one I'm at right now. So it was definitely a bit nerve-wracking, but I had felt prepared, and well, I guess it seems to have turned out well considering I'm here.
Where else did you get interviews at?
I got one at UCF Central Florida, I think one at USF for South Florida. I'm trying to remember exactly. Oh, I think it was George Washington was the other one.
Oh, nice. It's another really competitive program. You did really well.
Thank you.
What made you choose this program?
This program I chose for a couple of reasons. One was the location. Out of the programs I got into, this one had the location that I liked the most, being in a city, which is what I was looking for at the time. Now I'm not so sure if that was the best idea, but can't do anything about that. And other reasons were, one, it was 7 years, where some of the programs I got into were 8 years. I knew that 7 years more work, but it's also I wanted to be done a little faster, have that opportunity to take an extra year to do something else. So that was two of my main deciding factors. On top of that, it was mainly my visit to the school and how I felt about it when I visited, how I felt about the professors and about their ability to help me achieve what I want to achieve.
Yeah, I'm a huge component of, you could go to a place, sometimes you just know that it's right for you. Like, even though logically maybe it doesn't make sense, but that's how I felt and how I chose my college. And so I kind of believe with that too, it's what feels right. And so even though like Boston University no longer accepts new students to their BSMD program, I think students could still use like that kind of technique of visiting whenever possible, or at least doing a lot of research through webinars and like the virtual information sessions, as well as, thinking about, and obviously things can change, but thinking about where they want to end up and, how they want to get there. That can still be really useful advice for students in general.
Right.
So how was your first year in the program?
My first year in the program was, it was tough. It was more work than I had expected. Even knowing a jump from high school to college would be a big change. It was, I guess, more work isn't correct, but it was very different from what I was used to. At the same time, however, it was a lot of fun. I met a lot of new people, made a lot of friends, both in and out of the program, and learned how to balance my studying and relaxing so that I get my work done and still have time to relax and de-stress and do whatever I really need to do. So in the beginning, it was definitely very hard, and I was wondering why I did this to myself. But now it's become a lot easier. I think the main thing for me was our physics class. I am not the best at physics, and we had to take a calc-based physics class from the start. So it was an interesting start.
The good news is, unless you're planning to go into radiology, you won't really
No more
use
physics.
your physics anymore or your OChem. So
That's the goal.
yeah, it's all up from here.
All
Not
of-
really in med school.
Are you involved in like any extracurriculars?
I am not currently. There were a couple I was planning on joining and had to drop due to a lack of time last semester, and thinking of picking it up again either now or next year. One of them was a F1 racing sort of club. So what it was is you build an electric car with the team, an electric F1 race car, kind of like not a full car, I should say. It's closer to like a what is it called? Like a go-kart, I guess, but a bigger and more powerful than that. And there's a competition. You go with a few other schools and race it around the track. So that's one thing I was thinking of joining. And another would be ski and board club, because I've always been very interested in skiing, and I've recently started to pick up snowboarding too.
Does the program like require you to do like a certain number of like volunteering or shadowing or anything like that to stay in the program?
The program doesn't require any volunteering or shadowing, but it has GPA requirements along with specific classes we have to take, and well, that's actually about it.
Nice. Okay.
How many APs did you take, and did you feel like that helped you?
I actually went to an IB school, so I took only IB courses, but I took 5 higher level courses and 2 standard level courses, which were biochem, econ, math, history, English, and Spanish. So those courses I think definitely helped me in high school. In college. I wouldn't know if they helped me specifically get my acceptance into the program, but they definitely helped me prepare. Especially chemistry was quite a bit easier this year, because I knew I had a basis in a lot of the parts and units that we've been learning. And in terms of other classes, there's a lot of crossover and benefit from each one. For example, my English class helped me in all my classes, because all of them require writing of some sort, for example, like lab reports, so improving my writing, so those sorts of things. And also the increased workload from taking IB or AP level courses compared to normal high school courses, I think somewhat prepares you for college.
Would you
Said that I'm a journalism major, so obviously I'm biased towards being able to write and like how important that is. And so feel like a lot of science-based students kind of brush off the importance of taking like AP Comp or AP Literature. But yes, every career requires you to write at some point, and I'm sure with your research experience, all of that has been useful. But yeah,
Definitely.
glad you said that.
Is there anything that surprised you in your first year?
I guess what surprised me was college itself. So compared to movies, I would say college is very different, or compared to even stories I've heard from my sister, who's 7 years older than me, it's a very different experience from what I was expecting. I was expecting I guess more focus on the sort of party scene, and a lot of people wouldn't be focusing on school. And well, there are definitely a lot of, I guess, a few parties and people who don't really seem to do much in school, or don't seem to try or put the effort in, I should say. It's a lot different from what I expected, because the majority of, well, the school is always studying, always like looking at their grades, and people actually focus and care about their academics, which was different from what I expected. But also good, I would say.
Yeah, I think
Better
even
environment.
I feel like BU undergrad was even really competitive last year. And so they're really picking people who really want to be there and care about their education. So I feel like it's really nice just being in an area that's like so intellectually stimulating, and
Yeah.
people have a lot of motivation and drive to excel in school too.
Yeah. One thing I really love about the population at BU is a lot of the people, at least those I've met, are very well balanced. People focus on their academic life, but they also know when to take a break and when to be social, when to go spend some time with their friends. And I feel like it's very nice to be in that sort of community, because it's like you're with people who can study, and you're also with the same people you can hang out with later.
That's going to be super important for you too in med school. And I feel like in undergrad, like I was not like that at all. Like I literally like lived in my lab because I would go there and work for like a couple hours. Then I would, stay there until like 12 a.m. studying because I had the conference room to myself. So I never went to the library. And so like
I've
I never saw people, which I was totally fine
no,
with.
I've definitely done that quite a few times. Sometimes when I'm studying, I like to just go find some secluded area and I just stay there all day. But sometimes it's like, I can't do this. I need a break.
Do you feel like there's any benefits that you get in the BSMD program that you wouldn't get in the regular program?
There's definitely some benefits, some very obvious and direct benefits, and some less obvious. So one very obvious benefit is we get junior standing in terms of housing for our sophomore year. So we get a better housing number, a better chance at housing. We also get senior standing for our third year, and I believe junior standing in classes, which allows us to select classes earlier, and certain classes that we might not otherwise have been able to get. And another benefit, again, related to coursework and classes, is that we have an academic advisor dedicated solely to us. Normally, I believe academic advisors have many more students than just our 20. So this allows her to focus a little bit more on us. And being in the program itself opens a few doors. Sometimes, for example, if there's a class that's closed or all the students are there or has some prereqs that we don't meet, either our academic advisor or ourselves emailing the teacher and saying we're in the SMED program helps us open these doors and get into these classes. It can also be beneficial in terms of research, because not directly, but some professors might give preference to people in the program over other people, or being in the program kind of shows a certain level of, I guess, accomplishment and drive that interests researchers and professors a little more.
And what about the MCAT? Do you have to take the MCAT?
Oh, right. I completely forgot about that so far in the future, but we do, we have to take the MCAT. However, our requirement is much lower than if you were to directly apply to the med school. We have to get a minimum of 80th percentile, whereas I believe normally when of the people who are admitted, the average is around 95th or 90th. So definitely quite a bit easier for us.
Nice.
Yeah. They're actually talking about like eliminating the MCAT altogether, or like that's the newest rumor. So
I've heard about that actually. Yeah, that would be interesting.
yeah.
Be nice.
Honestly, studying for the MCAT does not help you in med school at all.
Really?
Like there's
Not at
nothing that
all.
you take from that exam.
So it doesn't really, it's kind of just there for fun, kind of like to bar the entrance, but doesn't really give you anything you need to know.
Listen, I did terrible on the MCAT, but I'm 6 weeks away from being a doctor. So
Well, seems like it worked out.
yeah, so there's nothing on the MCAT that helps you or like tells you if you're gonna succeed in med school or not.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah,
I'm like,
but you're
yes.
gonna do fine anyway.
We'll see.
It's kind of like the SAT, ACT, like none of that really indicates, like they always say it indicates like college readiness. It's a
Right.
terrible
I
test.
don't really think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I actually just saw, I mean, granted, this was like on Instagram, but I just saw someone say, like, if you study enough to get a 1500, it's just good enough to get into like all the competitive schools, and anything higher is just luck because they just like reuse a lot of like the different questions, and it depends if you get like a hard question or an easy question. And I was like,
Right.
that's like such an interesting thing to think about. I never thought about it like that.
Well, yeah, because once you get to like that point in the 1500s, you're at like the 99th percentile. And like, really, what's the difference between a 1510 and like a 1560? It's really just like a couple of questions that you got right. And so, yeah, I feel like luck probably does play a role in it, like what the passages are. I like distinctly remember the December 2020 test is like the easiest test in the world. Like I could take it and get, I feel like at least in the reading section, like every single one right with no problems. But then sometimes I read a passage and I'm like, wow, this one is really hard. So I think it does come down to luck on that.
Yeah.
I
That
know.
was me. That was me on the MCAT. I was like reading a history passage, and I was like, I mean, you're like so stressed out, like out of your mind when you're taking the MCAT. And I was like, why am I reading like a history passage? Like, I didn't prepare for this.
Yeah. It's not important necessarily, but at least you don't really have to stress, hopefully, as much with your 80th percentile.
That is the goal.
And do you have to do it on your first attempt, or do you get like multiple attempts? How does
We
that kind
get
of work?
multiple attempts. We just have to finish it by, I think it's a month or two before the next year starts.
Oh,
Right.
nice.
Or maybe right around that time. I think just around the normal med school application deadline to show it to them.
Okay, that's not too bad either then. Because I know Hofstra is like you have to get on your first attempt. And I think you have to be in the 80th percentile too, which isn't too
Yeah.
terrible, but still I feel like that pressure would mess up a lot of kids' kind of mindset.
Yeah.
That's a lot of pressure. Oh my gosh. Looking back, do you feel like your stats, personal qualities, or activities mattered the most?
I would have to say my personal qualities probably matter the most, followed closely by activities, because I think one thing that colleges really like to look at is your personal qualities. What type of person are they letting into their school? Is it someone who has drive, someone who's a good person, someone who's going to succeed, or is it someone who looks like they're going to have a lot of grade deflation and fall by the wayside? So it's one thing to show your personal qualities and not just your strengths, but also your weaknesses. Show, because it's important to know that you can acknowledge them and mainly that you can see them so that you can work on improving them. I would say my activities were probably closely followed by that because, well, a certain minimum threshold I think colleges look for in stats. Beyond that, I think it's really not that important to them because in the end, it doesn't really determine your intelligence. It doesn't determine what how smart you are or even really what you know. So while it is somewhat important and you need to meet a minimum threshold to be looked at, I don't think it's one of the most important things. Whereas I think activities can tell you a lot about a person, like what do they like to do, what type of person they are, and that's another important thing to the admissions office.
I think one of the most interesting things on your application, which I don't even think you mentioned here, is your tutoring like organization that you founded. So he founded an organization in his community, like completely free and like anyone can join. Like he did this with his friends. And I remember I was like, that is such an interesting thing to do. Like I mean, I know schools like have that, but like usually they're like not that good. Because they're just based off of like people who want to volunteer, but these are like people who are super passionate about tutoring, people in the community and really helping them out. And I feel like that's kind of the trends that we're seeing nowadays, right? Different passion projects that you can integrate into your community and really showing them that you're proactive. And, I love a good passion project because it shows so many different qualities. It shows one, like I said, you're proactive, but it also shows your leadership skills, organization skills, a lot of different qualities that you just can't get out of, doing something that someone else had set up for you.
Yeah. Completely agree. We've interviewed quite a few like BSMD admissions officers or like competitive summer programs or medical school like deans and people who are making decisions on letting kids like you into programs. And that's a huge thing that they've kind of reiterated over and over again is like, kids who are seeing problems in their community and finding ways to solve them in like a unique way. And so I'm assuming like this tutoring organization probably was born during the pandemic because that's when a lot of your high school came about and that was like a huge thing. And so that was something that was probably really great and that they were definitely looking for. And I feel like probably a lot of your activities reflected what your personal qualities were too, that you were trying to portray.
Right.
And so I completely agree that you said that those are probably the most important aspects of your application, because that's who you're going to be in 10 years. Your GPA, right. SAT score. I don't remember what I got on my SAT score. I couldn't tell you what my GPA was in high school, but I do remember like the activities. I do remember those types of things. And, those activities and like those personal qualities that you have, they'll stick with you a lot longer than your GPA will, hopefully.
What's your daily routine like?
My daily routine at school, right? Well, my daily routine is I normally try to wake up around 8 or 9 and then take a shower, get ready, eat some food in the dining hall, and then depending on if I have class or not, I'll either go to class or I'll study a little bit because I find I'm a bit more productive in the morning. So if I'm just studying, I'll probably either stay in the dining hall, or we recently had a very beautiful new building open that I might go to. And those are mainly my two things throughout the entire day, is just swapping out between studying and going to class. And then when I'm done with my classes, I'll try to finish any work I can that I can finish, or if I have a project, put some work into that. And then in the evenings or night, I try to go spend some time with my friends and hang out. Normally we try to go out to dinner like somewhere once a week, or at least have dinner together every day or most days. And I think that's a good way that helps me stay sane, helps me stay grounded in school, and helps me remember there are other people there. So that's normally what my routine is. Sometimes my studying is with other people, sometimes it's alone. And I guess in terms of food, I normally skip lunch and go straight to dinner. So that's all I really do.
I have a follow-up question about like the 3-year aspect of the undergrad. Are you cramming 4 years into 3 years, or are you kind of taking a, proportion of the credits that you have to take?
So we are cramming the 4 years into 3 years. So we have to actually take 4 classes, 16 credits over the summers. What most people choose to do is take 3 classes and 12 credits the first summer, and then there's one class we're required to take the second summer, so we can't move that. And that's the only class we leave for that second summer, because that would also be when we have to take our MCAT.
Wow. Okay.
So you're required to take summer classes?
Yes. We don't have to take them at BU. We can choose wherever to take them and see if the classes will transfer, but we are required to take a total of 16 credits over the summers.
Wow.
Interesting.
Yeah, I didn't know that. A lot of the times they'll kind of like, I don't know what the right word is, like prorate them almost, where if you needed 120 credits to graduate for the 4 years, you just have to take 90. I think like TCMJ and places like that do that. But that's interesting. I didn't realize you had
for us.
Yeah, to go all summer. Are you planning on taking summer classes at BU, or are you going to do it closer to home?
I'm planning to take them closer to home, or to take online courses to find whichever ones I need. So I know one class I need to finish this summer is Spanish, to finish off my language requirement, which I believe shouldn't be too bad considering I've been taking Spanish for a while, but we'll see about that.
What do you wish you knew before applying to BSMD programs?
I wish I knew, I guess this isn't about BSMD programs in general, or about each specific BSMD program, was kind of the competitiveness and the nature of the people or the type of program, because what I've learned since coming here is some programs are very different from our program. In our program, everyone knows each other and is at least friendly with each other, if not friends. But I know someone who goes to UConn and is in their BSMD program, and it's very different there because they're all competitive and trying to just get one up on each other, which obviously competitiveness is definitely at play. It's definitely a factor here, and you want to be the best. But I feel like it's different when it's a sort of friendly rivalry that helps each other do better, whereas it's trying to tear another person down to get on top of them.
That's interesting. Even though you guys are already like admitted to the med school, like
Right?
it's
Yeah.
competitive?
Some programs are still very competitive. I'm not sure if that program's a direct BSMD or one of those where it's there's those other types of programs where it's not a guarantee into med school, but it's some sort of assurance, or it's like better chances. I forget what it is, or you apply later rather than in the beginning.
Like a pathway program is typically
Yeah.
what, I didn't realize, I'm gonna have to look that up, because I didn't realize UConn was like that. That seems so silly to have that competitiveness when everyone's at the same place.
It might be exaggerated, or it might be or it might just be this year. Maybe they
Yeah.
just don't like each other. I'm not sure, but that's what I've heard.
That's really interesting. My school is very collaborative. Like, I
Yeah.
feel like if you ever have a problem, like anyone, even someone who doesn't know you that well, I feel like they're still willing to help you. So it was kind of nice because I went to UCSD where the pre-med program was totally like that, right? But we're not BSMD, we're just all pre-meds vying for like the limited medical school spots. But it was kind of interesting to see how that completely changed like once I got into med school. So hopefully their med school is not like that.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah. I think UConn is guaranteed interview, but
Okay.
not guaranteed acceptance. So maybe that has to play a factor.
Maybe. But still, it seems like a lot of the times the guaranteed interviews, a lot of the times they're just checking to make sure that you're, still meeting like their like competencies that they're looking for, and still, the person that they want to have in their med school program. And so it seems kind of silly to be fighting like that. But hopefully it's like a just his year or their year kind of situation.
Yeah.
What advice would you have for someone who wants to apply to BSMD programs?
I think my biggest piece of advice is definitely a bit cliche, but also true. So it's, I guess, to be yourself, be honest with the admissions officers. Is what a lot of people want to do is create a story, not necessarily lie or make things up, but create a story around themselves that portrays themselves differently than they do, because they think that's how they're supposed to act, that's how they'll get in, this is what society like expects of people. But admissions officers, one, they can see through those sorts of things because they have experience, they've been doing their job for quite a while. And two is also, it when you do something like that, it doesn't really show who you are, and it seems to ring kind of hollow. It doesn't seem to be like your drive or your passion may not show, and all of the good qualities that you do have may not show, and that might be a reason you don't get in. So for the same thing, either in essays or especially interviews, is be yourself and let the researchers see all of your good qualities, and I guess try to emphasize it to them rather than trying to change who you are.
Do you wish you could have changed anything about your journey? Like, and what schools you applied to, or like how you approached the cycle?
I guess I wish I had applied to just less schools, because I was a bit I was I mean, it helped out in the end, considering I think I got only 2 or 3 acceptances out of all the BSMDs I applied to. But I think that's one thing I would have liked to have done, is we looked at it a bit more in a analytical manner and weighed the risks, benefits of each one in terms of how much time I lost, how much effort I would have to spend on that, how much effort I lost on the other ones. And also, I guess, look at them in a more, even if I got in, would I want to go here sort of manner. I think I picked a few schools that were good schools, but I don't think I would have wanted to go there or had that desire. So that's definitely something to look at, is to actually research your schools and do some analysis into them.
Yeah, I think that that's something that gets skipped a lot of times because it's really overwhelming to
Yeah.
dive into even 20 schools. And there's so many schools out there that, and even BSMD programs that, you know, are open to out-of-state students. It's so overwhelming to do all that research. And a lot of times kids are just like, well, my parents or my counselor said that this school is fine, so I'm just going to do it, not considering it all. And then you waste
Yeah.
and then you don't really want that spot later on too.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy too. Like, even though you have a lot of interviews, it doesn't necessarily mean you'll get the acceptance. Like for med school, I think if you get an interview, you have like over a 50% chance. And so, you know, let's say you interview at 8 schools, you'll probably get into like 4 to 6 programs, right? Like the chances are pretty good.
Right.
But then for BSMD, like you can have 7 interviews and get into 1 school, which I think is like crazy.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I feel like when I have one kid who actually does have 7 interviews this year, and he's waiting to hear back from 4, but he found into already 3 of them and hasn't been rejected from any of his interview spots. I was like, this is unheard of. Like, this is not the typical student, because usually it's exactly, you're like lucky if you get into half.
Yeah, honestly, that's amazing.
Can't believe it.
That's great.
All right. Well, thank you so much for talking with us today. I feel like I learned a lot, even though I feel like we talked a lot about this already.
Yeah.
But if you like this content, please like this video and subscribe, and let us know what kind of other content you guys want to hear.